Morning. Let's go live to Madrid now, where the climate talks continue. Richie Merzian joins me. He's the climate director for the Australia Institute. Richie, thanks for your time. We saw Angus Taylor there this week making a forceful defence of Australia's involvement in the Paris Agreement and of Australia's targets and the trajectory that Australia is on. How's it been received?
It hasn't been received that well. Australia doesn't have very strong climate credentials when it comes to the UN climate conference. Emissions are going up. It scrapped its emissions trading scheme. It pulled out of the UN Green Climate Fund. So Australia doesn't have a lot of credibility to bank on. And then Minister Taylor came and gave a rather underwhelming speech where he called for technology improvement as a way of potentially advancing climate action. It didn't really go into any detail, didn't talk about the bushfires back home. It was a rather flat presentation, and a lot of people were wondering why he didn't go that step further.
When you look at the Kyoto carryover, I know that there's been some research that you've released over the last couple of days via some other think tanks as well, and some analysis done on this. It's known as the Kyoto carryover. The government says they should use it because it pertains to overachievement during the Kyoto cycle of climate reductions. Why is that not defensible in your view?
So under the Kyoto Protocol, Australia managed to really gain the best deal possible. It negotiated quite a high baseline. It negotiated to increase its emissions. And as a result, it was really easy to beat that target and create a surplus. But that surplus really stays within the Kyoto Protocol. There's no legal basis for it to transfer into the Paris Agreement, which is a new treaty. So this research that the Australia Institute and Climate Analytics did was look at that, do a legal deep dive into whether you can actually make a case. We found that there's very little to go on. And so Australia's been lobbying parties here in Madrid to try and make a case for those credits to transfer over. But it's been met with quite a bit of resistance. Over 100 countries are now backing a clear restriction to do that. And Australia might be isolated. It's the only one, especially out of all the developed countries who are in a similar position, that's lobbying for this kind of get-out-of-jail-free card. But ultimately, most people are saying, well, we'd prefer if you actually reduce emissions going forward, rather bank on these questionable credits from the past.
You spoke of those 100 nations putting pressure on Australia, but isn't it correct, Richie Merzian, that countries like China, like India, I think Brazil is in the mix as well, that they have interests in keeping that Kyoto credit alive for their own targets? Is that true?
In the broad, yes. So there's credits that have been generated out of the market mechanism in the Kyoto Protocol. But the credits that Australia is relying on for the most part have actually been assigned to Australia and don't really represent emission reduction. So there's really two types of credits. Now, currently the restriction is on all types of credits, but there's a lot of negotiations going on in the back rooms. And what we could see is an actual differentiation between the credits that Australia wants, these assigned credits, and then the market credits that, as you mentioned, Brazil, China, India, Korea are all major holders of. But we could see that there's an actual split and that Australia will be left isolated in lobbying for its case, for its particular type of credits to carry forward. And I think it's the only one who would be looking to do this. And that puts it in a precarious position, especially since our research shows there's no real legal basis for it to carry forward.
Finally, Richie, if we put Australia and the criticisms of the government to one side, what's the momentum like more broadly at this climate conference in Madrid?
So there was a bit of momentum injected this morning when Greta Thunberg, the youth activist from Sweden, spoke. As we all know, she was given the Time Person of the Year today, and she had a real call to arms that showed where things were at, the scale of the task that's required. She's saying not only do we all have to do more, but we need to be careful of those who say they're taking action but aren't really delivering. And she pointed out that a lot of countries are still here lobbying for loopholes as well. So Greta's speech really helped to wake people up with the task that's at hand. And hopefully that momentum will continue, because next year is the big year where all countries are expected to raise their level of ambition. So hopefully over the next 2 days, an agreement is reached, enough to keep that momentum going, so that come 2020, parties are in a good position to actually raise that level, to increase their 2030 target, look at how they take that step further.
Richie Merzian from the Australia Institute, thanks for joining us via Skype in Madrid at the moment. Thank you for that.